Shabbat Shalom. There's a story in the Midrash of a group of travelers who are traveling in a boat, and one of them suddenly gets out a drill. Since we're talking about the Midrash, it's not a modern drill, it's probably a very old kind of drill, and begins to make a hole in the boat underneath him. So all the others start screaming at him, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" He says, "What concern is it of you? I'm not drilling just under my own seat." I say, "Well, you're going to flood the boat for all of us." This is a 1,500-year-old story, and really about an idea that's at the heart of who we are as a Jewish people, right? Communal responsibility. Communal responsibility. On one hand, it means you have to take care of each other. You have to do mitzvot for each other, to help other Jews in distress. And all the ways we do this as a Jewish community in beautiful ways, by being there for people when they are ill, by helping people out financially when they need it, giving a meal, lending to fill in. The story I like to tell of the day my adopted grandmother, when I was a child, who was an ultra-Orthodox Jew from New York, came to visit us in France. And she arrived at the airport and didn't give us the right time, so there was nobody there to pick her up. She didn't speak a word of French. But someone there in this little rural airport recognized that her wig was not any wig. It was the wig of a religious Jewish woman, a sheitel. Came over to her and spoke a few words of Yiddish. She said, "Can I help you?" She said, "Well, I got to go to a place called Klar." And of course, somehow she mispronounced the name, and hours later, they're completely the wrong direction. But eventually they got there. Right? This is what we do for each other. Kol Yisrael arevim ze bazeh, or ze lazeh, depending on where you find the statement. But all of Israel has to support each other, because we're all journeying on the same path. We all come from the same place, Egypt. We're all trying to get to the heavenly Holy Land. We all face pharaohs along the way. We're all trying to do so, bringing justice and peace. So you have to be there for each other, thick and thin. And so our tradition teaches that this is part of what Moses wants to tell the people in this one of the last parshiot before he dies, and as we read every year before we come to the high holidays. And here Moses actually gives them a new covenant. We all hear about Sinai and the great covenant at Sinai and how that binds us. But in some ways, the covenant that Moses gives in our parsha is even more striking to how we understand our relationship with each other and our relationship with the Holy One. And so here he says, "You stand this day, all of you, before your God, your tribal heads, your elders, your officials, every householder in Israel, your children, your wives, even the stranger within your camp, from the wood chopper to the water drawer, everybody, even the people who weren't Israelites, are there in a moment to enter the covenant of your God. And I make this covenant with its sanctions, not with you alone, but both with those who are standing here with us this day before God Adonai, and with those who are not with us here today." But this is where it says, even those who are not standing there at that moment are still bound by it. So we have this idea that when you're Jewish, you're not actually born free, but you're born with a yoke around your head in terms of you're serving God, or you're part of a Jewish people. It's a good yoke some of the time. But this is the covenant that binds all of us. And it's not only binding us to Torah and God, but binding us to each other, because we're all, as he said, you're all standing here together, every one of you. And then it's a positive thing, but there's also a bit of a warning there, because right before the bit that we read this morning, God says, well, if there's one of you among all of you who thinks, well, this doesn't apply to me, I can do whatever I want, and that affects everyone. All the people and all the land can be led to devastation, and all those curses we read about last week. And then this bit that's always strange in the Torah says, well, concealed acts belong to God, but overt acts, public acts, are for you and your children. What does this mean? Well, some of the commentators says it means, well, if someone among you does something that's concealed and that's not good, God will take care of bringing it to light. But if someone is making a hole in the boat in front of you, you got to stop them. So the Torah's vision is that covenant is that everybody's well-being, our well-being is everybody's well-being, and everybody's well-being is our well-being. We don't have a choice. That's just how it works. And you have to take care of everybody. You have to take care of the need. And we cannot think that what I do won't affect everybody else. We're all in the same boat. One of the tragedies of when this does happen, when we don't think about that we're all in the same boat, is when we commemorate the destruction of the Second Temple. And we say the Second Temple was destroyed, and we're still 2 months after Tisha B'Av, we're still reading these Haftarot, so we're still in that great arc. And we're saying that, why was the Second Temple destroyed? Because Jews, hatred between Jews. And one of the stories of hatred between Jews is about the Jewish zealots who aggravated the Romans and burned all of the food inside Jerusalem during the siege because they wanted people to go out and fight the Romans. But it didn't quite work out that way. And that madness helped lead to the destruction of a temple and later to the defeat at the hands of the Romans. And the continued rebellions made the Romans crush the Jewish people even more, erased the hopes of rebuilding the temple, and sent everybody into exile. And so they weren't thinking of the zealots in Yerushalayim, weren't thinking about, well, there's other people here who need that food. And they wanted to take at all costs and stop the Romans, say, well, if we drill a hole in the boat, it'll force all of you to go ahead and act. So we're all in the same boat. And we're all trying to get to the other shore. And the waters are choppy. And the news of, as mentioned earlier, the news of the last few days we had of Nasrallah being killed and taken out of the picture, as many have said, and will continue to say over the next few days, brings a sense of restoration, that the IDF has the upper hand and can secure the Jewish people, where people felt very vulnerable over the last year. We still have to continue to look after each other and love each other as best we can and try and have a sense of being on the same boat and not doing anything that will create a hole in the boat as we go forward. And the more love we have for each other, the more room it will feel like we have. Like the Hasidic story of Rabbi Raphael of Bersha, the disciple of the Hasidic master Pinchas of Koresk, who was about to leave for his summer retreat in his carriage. And he asked one of his brother Hasidim, brother Shmuel, his Hasidic brother Shmuel, Reb Shmuel, to go in the carriage with him. And Reb Shmuel looks in the carriage, says, well, I'm afraid I'm going to crowd you. I don't think there's going to be any room in this carriage. Rabbi Raphael turns to him and he says, let us love each other more, and there'll be more feeling of spaciousness. And so on every side, we have to commit not to making holes in our boat. And this is the covenant that's before us the week before the Chagim. And we say we don't announce the new month, right? We should have announced a new month earlier in the service, but we don't before Rosh Hashanah because we're trying to confuse the forces of negativity, that they shouldn't know that it's Rosh Hashanah is approaching. The way I understand that is that the best protection against the evil forces is to have our sense of togetherness, not try and sabotage one another. Take care of everybody, because everybody's well-being is our well-being. And this year of all years, we're truly standing together with the year that passed, a difficult year, an impossible year, and the year ahead, an uncertain year. We don't know where it's all going to lead. And we're part of a community, we're part of the people of Israel, and this year we're really standing together and going through this together, standing before God together, standing before history together. And our pledge to each other, our covenant to each other that we were born into, is to support one another. And there's incredible beauty that comes from that sense of partnership. As the Baal Shem Tov says, as if we're all different limbs of the same body. And in our Parsha this week, there's a sense where it asks the question, well, it's not far away, it's not baffling, it's on your heart, it's on your lips. What does it mean that it's on our heart? As mentioned earlier, Ibn Ezra says, well, the most important commandments are commandments of the heart, because that's where we all meet together, all of us. We meet in the heart, one people, one heart, as we said on Mount Sinai. As we stand together, we look to help each other, and we do our best not to drill a hole in the boat for everybody else, but to be thoughtful before we act, and to be sure to care for ourselves and care for the needy. And remember who's on the boat with us. Remember the care that the Mishnah, the Midrash warns us about. And to think deeply about what the Torah commands of all of us. It's never that simple as we think it is. That we are one people with one heart. Shabbat Shalom.